Is your medication something they gave you?
During this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think about that bizarre clip that many of you have seen from JP Miller and exactly what it means and why it's important to what's going on right now. Hello, everybody. So glad you're here. Welcome back to What's the Obsession, a channel where we cover a number of true crime cases and do deep dives into various aspects of those cases. I'm Kelly. I'm a behavioral therapist, and today we are going to take a look at JP Miller's first televised response after his wife Micah passed away from what is officially considered to be a self-harm incident back in the end of April. There has been a lot of chaos and mayhem surrounding this story, and JP Miller seems to be at the center of it, particularly JP's behavior, his own behavior since Micah's tragic death, and also the behavior that we've learned about through court filings filed by JP Miller's ex-wife Allison and others. And that includes reports that were generated regarding incidents between JP and Micah while Micah was still alive.
So we've seen you in videos dressed as Spider-Man. We know there's a Spider-Man character in your the back of your house somewhere. Her family wonders if you have identity issues and this need to align with superheroes. What's your reaction? And what's the reason for the Spider-Man?
Well, first of all, I can neither confirm nor deny that I've ever put on a Spider-Man costume. But you'll never see me in the same room with Spider-Man, I will say that.
That right there, and several other awkward attempts JP Miller made at inserting humor into this interview fell flat on interviewer Richard McHugh. He did a great job. Before going forward, I would like to stress that at this time, Mica Miller's death is considered to be caused by self-harm, and JP Miller has not been charged with any crimes related to her death or otherwise, although he is the subject of an FBI investigation, and to this day, we don't know exactly what that investigation is about. Additionally, I want to stress the importance of Micah's Law, a law that is backed by Micah's amazing family and will be introduced to lawmakers very soon. The goal of this law will be to make coercive control a crime. So anybody who is suffering from coercive control, hopefully law enforcement will see the signs of that happening and will be able to act on it before coercive control turns into a tragedy. In order to fully understand this really bizarro situation and how strange but telling JP's recent interview is with Rich McHugh from Ashley Banfield's show, we have to kind of work backwards. And I do want to say, I think Ashley Banfield and Rich McHugh did an amazing first-class job covering this, so kudos to you guys. Now, check this out. This is a retrospective interview, and Ashley Banfield is asking Rich McHugh about some of the things that happened in that interview. Listen to this. It's crazy.
I've done over 2,000 interviews in my career, and this was easily the craziest interview I've ever been a part of. The energy was it was like being on a roller coaster. I didn't know where we were going. Like, I would ask him a simple question, and all of a sudden it would elicit a response like we just saw. Several times he admitted, like, I asked him a question about, okay, you admitted, in a letter to Micah, you admitted that you'd hired a private eye, and you apologized for slashing her tires, and et cetera, et cetera. And I said, why did you stop the private eye? Why did you stop, why didn't you know where she was the day that she died? He said, oh, I stopped because I ran out of money. And so we moved on. And after the interview, he texted me, he said, I'm sorry, I lied. I'm so sorry. That was not the real reason.
So as if we didn't already know just from the content of that interview that JP Miller was lying, there's just more proof in his own words to verify the fact that what he had to say in that interview, where he's supposed to be clarifying the truth, they were complete lies, so many complete lies. And there were so many indicators of deception throughout that entire video. I mean, JP Miller touched his nose. I was counting, and I got to about 50 times, and I just kind of kept losing count. He touched his nose over 50 times. There's so many mannerisms he displays in that video that are just so very strange. And then if you just listen to this, what he had to say about Micah and how he characterizes her videos that she created and posted onto Facebook during that time period after she had decided to leave him, while she was away from him, and before her death, which was just a matter of a few weeks, and there were just a handful of videos that were posted.
You know it's not her because she has a different cadence, a different tone, a different amount of words per minute when she's healthy and on medicine than when she's off. And the way she was even looking into space when she's taking those videos, you knew she was delusional.
You are the bride of Christ. And my Bible says that he took all the abuse you could think of for you. Jesus took it all for you. So you don't have to stay in a abusive relationship. I'm trying to get my priorities straight right now. And that's making sure that my heart doesn't have any unforgiveness, bitterness, resentment, just forgiveness and hope for the future and peace. Because you can't put a price on peace.
I don't know. What do you guys think? Leave a comment down below and let me know what you think about Micah's demeanor in those clips. To me, she sounds and appears to be as clear as a bell. Now, before we venture into tackling this entire really strange interview from JP Miller that happened just a few days ago, I just want to play this short sound clip from Micah's father. Micah's family has had a lot to say since Micah's death, and this channel supports them 100%. And I'll be introducing some of what they had to say throughout this video. But to just keep in mind the kind of person that is responding to Rich McHugh's questions throughout this interview, this is one thing Micah's dad had to say.
She said, Dad, he had me in the car. We would be driving after dinner, and he would just say, hey, let's go get a prostitute. Just like nonchalant, no big deal.
You would like say that to her? Like,
Yeah,
did he want her involved in a
Like he
threesome?
wanted some kind of a threesome?
Absolutely.
It's just horrible and disgusting and shocking, isn't it? We'll hear more from Micah's family. Now, although this was, yes, JP Miller's first official interview on mainstream media, JP Miller has been heard of in an unofficial capacity in a number of ways, and one of those ways is through a TikTok channel. So before moving on into the content of the entire interview, I just want to give you this backdrop of some of the things that JP said and how they sound to you, to just give you a little bit of history of what he has in fact been saying since Micah's tragic death.
After my wife passed away, I texted the family telling them I would pay for all their travel expenses. They asked me for $2,500 and then $1,000, so I gave them $3,500. 7 minutes after the check was cashed, they posted on Facebook they needed money from all of you. They said I forced them to sign some cremation paper that I knew nothing about, had no idea what they were talking about. Days later, I was given this piece of paper that the mom and dad both signed saying they wanted Micah to be cremated, and they chose to have that, which I totally agreed with because of the way that she passed away. I thought that was what was best, but nobody forced them to sign anything, and I don't even know what they're talking about with that. They said that I pushed the cremation to happen quickly to hide things. The national average is 3 days because after that the body starts to smell. She was cremated 6 days after she passed away so that her ashes would be ready for the funeral the next day. The funeral director called me and said the bill's going to be $18,000. I said, why? He said they all picked out 24 karat gold jewelry. So I said, please call them back and let them know that if I'm paying, they got to get the cheap stuff. The tattoo that have her signature, it was gotten back in January with her. She wanted a very, very thick wedding band tattooed on her wedding finger so that when she was working out or we were on vacation when she didn't have a ring, she'd let everybody know she was still married. That is not something that someone who's being abused does, but she wanted that tattoo and she wanted me to get her signature, so I showed up and did it. And so tonight we're going to deal with something that Michael Francis said. Micah, my wife, had 7 days. I think her mom's married 7 times. Michael Francis is the biological father, and he said the other day on some show something to the effect of Micah's, one of her tattoos, my name that's my signature that is tattooed on her body. He inferred that meant that I owned her and that I was controlling and manipulative, and I made her get that tattoo so I could brand her and stamp her and say that she belongs to me. And that's not really how it worked. The first time she got my signature tattooed on her, it was when we were dating. And I was actually in New York on a vacation, and she sent me a picture of what she had done, and I was surprised. A few weeks later, we broke up, and she covered it up with a lotus flower. And then we got married, and then a few years later, she got my signature tattooed on the other side of her body. But I don't think that it means that I was controlling and manipulative. I don't think it means that I owned her. I don't think it was a brand or anything I forced her to do. It was completely her idea. Greetings, everybody. I am here to let you know that my silence is nothing more than wisdom and self-control so that we can win the war that is up ahead. And I am looking forward to presenting over 350 pieces of proof on what Micah thinks about her family and what Micah thinks about her lawyer and the things her lawyer's saying and the things that her family's saying and Charlotte and all these other people that are saying things. People forget that Micah corresponded with me more than anybody else on planet Earth. And I know her heart, and I have her text messages, and we're going to disprove all the lies that are out there. And there's so many lies, it seems like everybody thinks the world is flat. And you ask them why, and they say, well, it says on the news the world's flat. Or, Robbie Stinky Harvey said that it's flat. Or JLR Never Investigates says that it's flat. But when I get to court, I'm going to show you that the world is round. And you're going to be shocked at some of the things that you see that Micah says. And we're going to find out actually who is responsible for my wife's death. And Micah will have justice when it's all said and done. And I'm going to make sure of it. So thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you soon. God bless.
Is it okay if I ask you a question that somebody asked?
I'll see. Let me say this. I want to answer everything, but I don't want to answer it without me holding up my proof and showing it to you, because I think it's just ignorant for someone to just give, their opinion or say something and not have proof behind it when it's something as serious as this is. And so I'll be doing that next week, and I'll love to send you the proof and everything along with the affidavit, most likely.
Okay.
Oh, am I allowed to touch it and scroll down? Because somebody said something I couldn't see. They said,
It's going fast.
JP. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's going fast. Who said be respectful? That was so nice. Someone named Bonnie.
So here's what JP himself said about his stated intention for doing this interview in the first place. And as you're going to see, I don't really think that he hit the mark on his own goal.
Emotion has died down in the world, and with people that are led by their feelings, I think now they deserve to hear some.
Right off the bat, we can see that JP was very emotional, one of the first indicators of his instability.
Do you miss her?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did you see this coming?
Yes, but it doesn't change at all the power of the pain of reality. I saw it coming for years. I told them for years this would happen over, and I said if she gets off her medicine, suicide is the next thing. And she tried it in the past, but with me, she always remained okay with me. She was on her meds with me. She was healthy and happy. And even if she did get low or stop taking her medicine, I would help her get back on it, and things would be fine without me and with her family. She's off meds, and she committed suicide. And I told them this would happen over and over again. I tried my best to stop her from getting a gun. I went to judges. I have copies of all the police. I talked to her counselor, the pastor she was going to, her family, her friends. I told them all, don't let her get a gun. Do whatever it takes, prevent her from getting a gun. And when she was with me, she was never able to go that far. But with them, that's exactly what happened.
So there we go, right at question 3. JP Miller is basically able to expound his entire forced narrative on Rich McHugh and the entire News Nation viewing audience. That with JP, she was safe and she was on her medicine. Without JP, she was unsafe and she was not on her medicine. JP was vying for her safety, was her advocate, was her cheerleader, was her protector, and her family were the people who were harming her, who were pulling her away from being happy and being safe. And this narrative is repeated throughout everything that JP Miller has to say in this interview. In fact, the very first time the world heard from JP Miller, which was kind of incidentally through a YouTube podcast, he was immediately, the first time he spoke to the world, spinning that narrative. Listen to what he had to say here. Sorry, the audio is kind of bad. It was sort of a strange stream.
No, just everything that shows why she passed away, who's responsible for it, and that I did every single thing a human being could do and far more to try to keep her alive and keep her safe and keep her healthy. I was the only one. I went to 48 people in 3 months and told them she needs her lithium, and she does not need to be anywhere near a weapon. And nobody believed me.
Listen here to what Mica Miller's father has to say about the whole dynamic of Micah being with JP versus Micah being with her family, spending time with them and being close to them. I think it is her father who is speaking the truth.
The more we tried to get Micah to spend time with us and get her to talk about this, the more he tried to keep her away from us, to the point of here's a big revelation about his character was he coached Micah into calling Child Protective Services on her mother.
Now, do remember that Micah was a member of JP Miller's church since she was 14, and the family and others report that JP Miller had been grooming her since a very young age, which is one of the reasons JP Miller was able to have so much control over Micah.
What was going on in your marriage the week Micah died?
The week she died, we didn't talk that entire week. I'd emailed her several times that week, and my regular emails are sending her letters telling her that I love her. And she came over to the house. The last time I saw her was a few weeks before she passed away. We spent about 4 hours together, and we hugged and kissed, and she was in and out of psychotic conversations. She would say, one thing about double agents that are following her. That was one of the phrases she would use when she was off her meds, double agents.
JP Miller knew very well that her talking about double agents following her was not delusional because, in fact, there were people following her. He himself, later in this interview, talks about the private investigator he had hired who was tracking Micah for a long time. This is one example of how JP uses the sneaky things that he does. He spins it around to make Micah feel like she's crazy. This is also known as gaslighting, and this is a common tactic used by abusers.
The other phrase she would say, she wants to come home so bad, but her family won't let her.
Now, when Rich McHugh asked JP Miller about what happened in the week before Micah's death, this is the first time, and still very early into the interview, we see JP Miller trying to change the narrative to make some of the crazy or inflammatory things that he had done that may have pushed Mica Miller towards self-harm or maybe evidence of something more nefarious. He tried to turn that around to make it look like he was doing something to try to help her, to save her, something loving and compassionate towards his wife. Although we know from the testimony of many other people and evidence that that is not the case.
What was going on in your marriage the week Micah died?
The week she died, we didn't talk that entire week. I'd emailed her several times that week, and my regular emails are sending her letters telling her that I love her. And she came over to the house. The last time I saw her was a few weeks before she passed away. We spent about 4 hours together, and we hugged and kissed, and she was in and out of psychotic conversations. She would say, one thing about double agents that are following her. That was one of the phrases she would use when she was off her meds, double agents. The other phrase she would say, she wants to come home so bad, but her family won't let her.
Now, to get a good idea of what was really going on with JP and Micah in the week or so before her death, let's hear what some of her family members and friends had to say. This is Mica Miller's best friend, Charlotte Nelson, speaking when she was interviewed by the podcast True Sunlight Podcast, which used to be the Murdoch Murders podcast by Mandy Matney and Luna Shark Productions. Take a listen here.
It just nothing about it made sense to me. And, the one scenario that I could wrap my head around her being the one that pulled the trigger herself is, she'd filed a no contact order 48 hours before this. And he did not, at least to my knowledge, still did not have her newest phone number. But if he had gotten her phone number or had showed up somewhere after this no contact order had been filed, the one scenario that makes sense to me is she felt totally helpless. Like this is never going to end. It doesn't matter what I file. The police are not helping me. He won't stop. And so that is the one scenario that I could, somewhat understand why she would do that.
So y'all, you heard it right there from Micah's best friend, Charlotte. She said, and this has been corroborated by many, that Micah had filed a do not contact order just days before her death, and she had been changing her phone number so JP could not get a hold of her. You see, Micah had finally made the decision that she was resolute in to leave JP and to resume living her life as a free, carefree woman who could live the way that she wanted. She did not want JP to contact her, and she was running away from him, so he couldn't contact her. So the only way he had to contact her was email. That was not by his choice. That is because she cut off all ties and lines of communication with JP Miller. So we see how he twists things throughout this entire interview. It happens to make him look like the good guy, like Superman, Spider-Man, if you will, and to make Micah's loving family and friends look like terrible people who wanted something bad for her. It's just all so crazy. And now regarding what JP says about the last time that he and Micah were together, that it was very loving and they were hugging and kissing, and just listen to what Mica Miller's sister Anna has to say about that.
Our family does have evidence that the last time they had any interaction was in close proximity with each other. It was the complete opposite of what he's saying it was. They did not kiss, they did not hug, they did not talk about getting back together.
Now, one of the things that JP would point to when he would claim that Mica Miller was psychotic, that she was out of touch in reality, he would talk about how she wanted to move to Africa, and he'd be like, oh, yeah, honey, yeah, sure, yeah, cuckoo. Well, there is tons of evidence, even his own words, his own writing to her, and his own statements that indicates that Micah enjoyed so deeply her charity work in Africa. She was very, very passionate about it, and she had every intention of deepening her work with those children in Africa, and this pastor that they worked with in Africa, Pastor Jumba. And it was not at all delusional that Micah would want to be in Africa, helping those children that she cared so much about, putting effort into that charity organization that she was so completely passionate about. Everybody says it is what motivated her. It was her driving force. It was what she loved most.
She came over to the house. The last time I saw her was a few weeks before she passed away. We spent about 4 hours together, and we hugged and kissed, and she was in and out of psychotic conversations. She would say, one thing about double agents that are following her. That was one of the phrases she would use when she was off her meds, double agents. And the other phrase she would say, she wants to come home so bad, but her family won't let her. She told me she wanted to live in Africa and asked me if I'd live with her. I said, sure, if you take your medicine, And so she told me if I'd give her some money and if I would write her a letter saying certain things in this letter that she would take her medicine. And so I tried that, and but she desperately wanted to come home. She was just so afraid her family would disown her.
Micah's trips to Africa and the work she did there, it was her great inspiration. It was her great passion. It was her drive in life. It was really the primary thing that, according to everyone around her, she seemed to be looking forward to in her life. And she was looking forward to those trips back to Africa to work with those children. And oh boy, did JP like to use those trips to Africa and the work that she did in Africa and her passion for it is ammunition to fire right back at her. It was not at all that she was delusional in thinking that maybe she would move there and spend more time there. It is more that perhaps JP resented her love for this mission over him. Let's take a look at this email that JP Miller sent to Micah in March of 2024. Now remember, Micah sadly left this earth in the end of April 2024. He is clearly using her desire to go to Africa and her love for that mission against her pointedly. Hi Micah, I hope that you're doing well. I'm ready to be done and move on and heal and find a first lady who won't treat me the way you are. I really hope you do great things. I was willing to do anything. I even had an amazing desire to have kids since you're not on meds. And I want to apologize for the flowers and fruit. It was already paid for to last until your birthday. Feel free to give it all away. I sent that to you before I found out all the things that I have recently found out about you and what you've done, and you disgust me. So please, let's meet soon and be divorced and let this nightmare be over for me. I'm enjoying all of the Africa missions that Pastor Jumba and all the pastors' wives are so excited for what we're doing. We expect 120 kids our first semester. I have about 10 to 12 people going this time, including Kristen and Tom Winslow, and Becca and Jonathan, etc. And I need to move on ASAP. I need a woman who will respect me and love me and be worthy of all that being a first lady is about. What an absolute piece of shit he is.
And so the week before she passed away, I probably emailed her maybe 7 or 8 times that week just saying, I love you. You need your lithium. Don't forget who you are when you're on medicine versus who you are when you're off. She had lost 40 pounds in a month, and nobody that was in her life thought to take care of her.
This might be a good time to look at some of the language that JP Miller uses and some of the tactics that he was using to keep Micah under his control. So this whole idea of Micah being on lithium versus her being off lithium and being with him and being with her family is a dichotomy that JP Miller created to force Micah to choose one or the other. So the effect is whatever her choice is, it comes from a place of a lot of conflict and tension and high emotion. So when that decision, so to speak, is made, the person, adheres really strongly to the one side or the other of the dichotomy. And this is a common technique that abusers use, as did JP Miller here. So lithium and, being on medication is really synonymous with her being under his control. And not being on lithium and, being in contact with her family is synonymous in his language and their language, Micah and JP's together, because he groomed her and brainwashed her, is synonymous with her not being under his control. People will often ask why women stay in abusive relationships. People may ask why Micah stayed in her relationship with JP for so long. And this is because the abuser has the victim in this kind of tightly wound cycle of abuse that is marked by tension building, an incident of violence, reconciliation, and then the calm. So what's happening right here, what JP Miller is talking about, is his attempt this time around to get Micah to reconcile with him. And she clearly, this time, was resisting more than she ever had before, which freaked JP out. Now, this is one reason that I still believe that Micah's death may have been caused by something nefarious, because JP Miller got so angry and anxious and just absolutely flipped out about the possibility of Micah actually leaving him.
Nobody. She was living with a former registered nurse. Her family, quote unquote, were taking care of her. She lost 40 pounds in 1 month, and no one thought she needed help. She was talking about living in Africa. No one thought she needed help. She's making videos on Facebook, and if you see the videos, you know it's not her, because she has a different cadence, a different tone, a different amount of words per minute when she's healthy and on medicine than when she's off. And the way she was even looking into space when she's taking those videos, you knew she was delusional.
Now, why is it that John Paul, again and again, uses these videos that Mica Miller made between the time that she left him and the time of her death? I believe there were 3 in total. as examples of her being crazy, of her being delusional. For I believe just about anybody who watches them, they see a woman speaking who is far from delusional. In fact, in my opinion, Micah was incredibly lucid, and her thinking was ordered and clear and straight in these videos. Her message was decisive, and she was delivering it effectively. Listen to this. This is an excerpt from one of those videos that Micah put out during that time.
I've had a lot of women that have reached out to me about situations of abuse. And I just want to tell you what a lot of people have told me. Male or female, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what gender you are. Abuse is abuse. And you are the bride of Christ. And my Bible says that he took all the abuse you could think of for you so that you didn't have to live that life of slavery and bondage and pain. So you don't have to stay in a abusive relationship, whether that's sexual, whether that's somebody forcing you to take illegal drugs or alcohol abuse or physical abuse, psychological abuse, making you think that this is all your fault, or you're a bad mom, or you're a bad wife, or you're a bad husband, or you're not giving it your all when you know you are. God hates divorce, but why? According to everybody I've asked and the scriptures that I've found, it's because it hurts people. But does abuse hurt people? How do you think God feels about that?
Now, the reason that JP Miller keeps making a point of these videos is because they are so very threatening to him. They were and they are. Because JP Miller doesn't truly see a delusional person here. JP Miller sees just what the rest of us do. Somebody whose thinking is very clear, who knows exactly what she is saying, has a message, and she wants to get it out there. Now, this was a change in Micah's behavior and what JP wanted to be that reconciliation phase of abuse. It was clear resistance to his efforts towards having the abusee reconcile with the abuser. And this was the biggest threat that JP could possibly face. He's seeing Micah standing on her own 2 feet, being strong, being of clear mind, heart, and body. And he just could not stand that, because the Micah that he wanted was the Micah who was weak, who was injured by everything that he had done to her, and was so just falling apart at the seams because of his treatment of her, that she felt like she needed someone. She needed him to be a whole person again. Well, these videos were an indication to JP that the gig was up, that she did not need him anymore, and that Micah was going to stand on her own and be just fine. And this put JP Miller over the edge. And again, I will say this is one of the reasons that I still believe it is very possible that Mica Miller's death was not due to self-harm, but rather something more nefarious. Please leave a comment below and let us know what you think. I'm really interested to see what y'all think about that at this time.
And if somebody loved her enough to take her to a professional and say, okay, this woman says she's being abused, or this woman says, you know, this, or she's lost 40 pounds in a month. If someone thought, I need to take her to a professional, that professional would have known that she needed medicine. And the reason I know that's true is because I took her a few weeks before she passed away. I took her to probate court. And in 3 minutes time, she went in, she walked back out. When I went in, they said, your wife is mentally ill and she needs medicine desperately. And I said, okay, let's do it. Let's get her the medicine. Let's get her help. And they said she's not a danger to anybody in society, so we can't force her to do it.
What is interesting about this clip is JP is talking to Rich McHugh, the interviewer, the same way he would talk to Micah. You know, if this person or that person in your life loved you enough, then they would have taken you to a doctor. And of course, he also knows exactly what a doctor would have said, and basically spells out the prescription a doctor would have given Micah at that time.
But if one of her family members or friends had taken note of the way she was acting and seen what was happening to her physically and taken her to just one professional, they could have saved her life.
He knows what a doctor would do because he heard so from a judge. Because when he took Micah to court, the judge told him that Micah was crazy and she needed medication. And then he went on to say, but she's not a danger to society, so there's nothing the court can do about that. Can you imagine a judge giving mental health advice? Can you imagine the liability? I can't believe any of that happened whatsoever. Let's hear what really happened to Micah, medically speaking. Okay, since there is so much talk in this interview from JP Miller about Micah taking her lithium or not taking her lithium, and he's bringing into this interview all of this supposed advice that these medical experts gave her and these other experts gave her, let's listen to Mica Miller's father to find out what really happened when Micah started taking lithium and why exactly that was, and in what point in her life did that happen. Now, there is a whole lot of information in what Michael Francis is about to say next. First of all, he confirms for what I believe the first time is that the surgery that JP Miller forced Micah to have was breast augmentation surgery. He talks about how out of it she was after that surgery and that the surgeon used a ridiculous amount of anesthesia on her. You're just going to have to listen to what he says here. And then he also goes on to say that it was at this time after her breast augmentation surgery, which was right before they got married, that Micah was diagnosed with, I guess, bipolar disorder for the first time when she was prescribed the lithium. So this was right at the beginning of their marriage, just before they got married.
We never told her don't take your meds. We said follow what your doctor says. The only thing I was, said at a certain point was you don't probably need lithium. You probably need something less than that, if anything, because she was not diagnosed with anything until she was out of it because of anesthesia and numbing medication from the surgery.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. She started taking medications after some sort of surgery?
Yes. Okay, well, as you stated earlier, he's a sex addict. He involved her with prostitution, etc. Well, I mean, ultimately, you could say he wanted a Barbie doll kind of wife. So he convinced her to have breast augmentation, which she didn't care about. I mean, she thought, okay, well, maybe it'll make me be a little more feminine for him or whatever. But she was super active. She didn't, she was built in a way where she could climb and jump and run and do things, and she didn't need large breasts, kind of doing what they do. So, but he, convinced her to do it. And he also seems to have convinced the anesthesiologist and whoever else, the doctor himself, to over-medicate her because he told them that, oh, well, she's terrified that she'll wake up during the surgery. That surgeon was barred from practice and had to shut his practice down. The nurses said they had never seen anybody get so much numbing medication in her chest. They're to quote them, they said they used the entire container of numbing agent in her. She was high for days.
And in response to this crisis that Micah was going through, what did her loving husband or husband-to-be do? Of course, he put her in the hospital. He admitted her into a psychiatric hospital for the first time.
What does he do in response? Put her in the hospital. She's crazy. It's like, dude, it can take up to a year for that to subside from that kind of damage. Okay. I've heard testimonies from other people about that.
And then he had her put on some sort of like antidepressant medication, because that's what it sounds like.
Yes, okay. That's when he put her on actually lithium. At that point, as far as I know, that's when he had her admitted for the first time, and it was between when they got married. Well, see, they had a secret wedding supposedly because he convinced her that if you since there was infidelity, if they were to get married, it would help cover that up. It would cover it, which is totally not biblical, of course. You can't do that. You can't cover up something like that just by doing some other action. Just doesn't even matter what it is. That is not what you do. And so they had a secret wedding, and he put her in the hospital, and I went with him and visited because I was in the area. And I went up there and visited her with him, and when she came out, though, it was immediately time for the actual wedding. The ceremony that they had. And I mean, Micah said she didn't even remember the wedding. She was so built up.
Wow.
She couldn't even really get a handle on the process of it. Like I was going to walk her down the aisle and do all this. And when the door opened up and everybody stood up, she just took off walking. She didn't wait for me. And so I walked behind her and, we did everything kind of on the fly because Micah was she was sedated. She was drugged.
Do you think?
So JP Miller then goes on to tell us about his alibi, that he was at a soccer game with hundreds of people, and he's describing spending time with one of his children, and says there are tons of receipts for that. When Rich McHugh asks him what he thinks happened on that last day that Micah was alive, he goes on to talking about how, based on what doctors have said in the past, right, and how Micah was acting in his observations of it because he's an expert, he goes on to tell that she had tried to self-harm 6 or 7 times previously, and only one of those times was she truly depressed. The other time she was in a state of mania because, as we all know, he is Dr. J.P. Miller, PhD of psychology. And then the way he goes on to describe Micah and what she said here, I think is just really disgusting.
And she would wake up and say, I think I'm supposed to die today. And I'd say, no, honey, you're not going to do that. She said, well, my mind tells me that I'm supposed to kill myself. I said, we're not going to listen to your mind. We're going to take you to a doctor and get you help. And I discovered, of course, that she had stopped taking her meds each time. But
so you notice how every time something bad happens, it's because she stopped taking her meds every single time. And do you notice when he talks about her stopping her medication, he's always then touching his face, touching his nose. Now, remember that we determined that J.P. Miller saying that she is on lithium or off lithium is synonymous with Micah being under his control or him being fearful and jealous and terrified because Micah is not under his control.
so far, the 4 people she spent the most time with every week, no one's interviewed or talked to those 4 people. And one of those people that I talked to told me that she told her 2 years ago, if I ever commit suicide, I'm going to go to this place in Lumberton, the state park or something like that.
Which friend is that?
I probably wouldn't want to name her because I saw this friend one time here in public for 30 seconds. And of course, Robbie S. Harvey, as usual, got somebody to take a picture and destroyed the girl's life, brought up her past and horrible things about her. So people are scared to tell the truth or to talk about the good things of Micah because of the social media.
So this.
Now, isn't it interesting that this mystery friend of Micah's, who is afraid to speak about Micah or to say good things about Micah due to, something somebody else did. In this case, it's Robbie Harvey, of course, who J.P. Miller goes after strong, said that, Micah told me 2 years ago, if ever she were to take her own life, it would be at Lumberton State Park because she likes nature. Now, this is a place where friends and family have said again and again and again and again that Micah has absolutely no ties to. The family has no ties to it. The friends have no ties to it. It's just kind of this place in the middle of nowhere that nobody knew about, and nobody other than J.P. Miller and this mystery friend who heard from Micah 2 years ago that she wanted to take her life in Lumberton State Park has ever made that connection between Mica Miller and Lumberton State Park.
Friend says that Micah told her, if I'm going to take my life, I will probably do it in Lumberton River State Park.
She told me that after Micah passed away, but she told me that Micah told her that 2 years ago, yeah.
Did she say why? Why that location?
She said because Micah told her it was peaceful and outdoors. And Micah did love the outdoors, loved the outdoors. Vacations were outdoory vacations because that's what she loved. But so
Has she ever been there?
No, not that I know of. Not ever that I know of.
Do you guys have any connection to that area?
Not at all.
Have you ever been there?
Nope. I've never even heard of the place. I never even heard of, what's the city? Robinson County. I've never even heard of there before.
Now, whether J.P. Miller had or had never heard of the place Lumberton State Park or Robertson County, this is a little bit speculative, but he claims, nope, never heard of the place, don't even know it. He can't even pronounce the name of the county. But remember, going way back to when sleuths first started investigating this case, because of our love for Mica Miller, all of the information that was found out about JP's connections, or sometimes secondhand connections to that area, including the big piece of land that his attorney owns right next to Lumberton State Park. Let me give you a little refresher in case you forgot.
According to Myrtle Beach SC News, Winslow owns a lot of property, about 200 acres of land near where Mica Miller's body was found.
So let me just read you this little piece from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina SC News. It says, the overseers of Solid Rock Church and Market Commons then released Pastor John Paul Miller from all ministerial duties. However, Pastor John Miller actually owns the church building. This makes it impossible for him to be fired. Winslow owns land that backs up to State Park. Attorney Tom Winslow owns 200 acres that back up to the creek that leads down to where Micah's body was found. Now, according to what I am able to tell, Winslow's property is about a 15-minute drive from Lumberton State Park, which certainly does not definitively connect J.P. Miller to that area, therefore proving that he is lying when he says he doesn't know anything about the area, but it's just a piece of information I wanted to throw in here, since a lot of people believe that there could possibly be a connection within this information just explained. Now, although this may or may not mean anything, I just want you to take a look at these still shots that I took of JP Miller's expression when Rich McHugh asks him if he knows of the Lumberton State Park area. Leave a comment down below and let us know what you think. And again, this is just, like an observation that I made.
Before.
So did it strike you as, before you heard this, did it strike you as odd when you heard that where she went and what they say allegedly happened? Did you question it at all?
Well, I didn't think it was real. I thought her family had made it up and had somebody call me and say that.
The man never misses an opportunity to blame the family now, does he?
That's one big thing. I didn't think it was real. When I found out it was real, you know how like you tell somebody something, you tell them, then when it happens, you don't want to say I told you so because it's a horrible thing. That's what I felt like. I felt like I told y'all, like I told her family this so many times you can't imagine. I told her friends this. I told everybody. I said, if y'all don't get her lithium, she's going to commit suicide.
Here we go again. JP Miller is asked a question not related to what he says here, and he, for the third time in this interview, reiterates his narrative. She needed to be on lithium. She wasn't on lithium. It was the family's fault. I told them that she should be on lithium, so therefore it's their fault that she is no longer with us. I was right. They were wrong. Na boo boo. It's just becoming really predictable now, isn't it?
Her doctor told her this on paperwork where her doctor said this. And
there it is. I almost forgot. You had to throw on the expert endorsement of JP's right and everyone else is wrong.
And then when I get the call, I felt like the world's biggest failure, because I spent the past 3 months when her family got her out of the hospital and didn't bring her home, and her dad talked her into buying him a car, and all this stuff was happening that was all crazy. I made a vow that I was going to do something every single day to try to get her back on her lithium and save her life. And so every day I did something. Sometimes I did 4, 5, 6, 7 things. Some days it's just one thing. But every day, whether it was an email, a text, visit someone, talk to a family member, talk to a friend, go somewhere, go to a judge, go to probate, I'm going to do something to save her life. And I spent every single day for those 3 months doing that. So getting that phone call made me feel like the world's greatest failure.
There we go. I mean, this is getting easy. JP Miller justifying his stalking behavior, although his wife, Mica Miller, wanted him to leave her alone.
I was against the whole world because everyone told me that it wasn't true and that I was making it up and that whatever they were saying. So it was me against the world for 3 months, and I failed. Because
after all, for an egomaniacal narcissist like JP Miller, it is, in the end, always about him. Now, what's going to be interesting is how much of this interview might be used in a civil suit against JP Miller, particularly in this next little ditty that he tells. Just listen closely and see if you can find what's wrong with it if you haven't already, if you haven't heard this interview. And then we'll hear what Mica Miller's former lawyer and the Miller family, Micah's family's current attorney has to say about what he said as a whole in this interview.
What was the call, and who was the call from, and what did they say?
Man, it was a man. I got a call, and it was I think it was a detective. And I remember him being very calm and very nonchalant. And so that's why I thought, well, this is not real. And so I started screaming. I had a family member that was there with me. I started screaming for them to use their phone to call the hospital where the guy said she was at. And my family member called the hospital and said it was real. And I still didn't believe it. And so I called a police chief that I know somewhere around here, captain or somebody. And I said, there's a detective named such and such on the phone telling me these things. Like, is this real? Is this a real person or not? And that person told me that it was real as well. And I just remember I remember screaming really loud and throwing up everywhere. And
what did they tell you?
I remember throwing up. Did I have spaghetti that day? It was a lot of throw up. It was something red.
Now, this bit about describing the vomit that he said he was experiencing when he found out the news, and yes, of course, that can be a reaction if you find out something really upsetting. It can make you literally sick to your stomach. But this just reminded me, do you remember that story that he told on the pulpit about this pastor friend of his that called him, and he was just all distraught because his wife, you know, on a Monday was telling him, oh, he's so wonderful. He's the greatest husband in the world. And then all of a sudden, he didn't know what happened, but she left. She just left. She left behind all of her worldly belongings. She left everything. And so he didn't know what to do. So this is what his pastor friend did.
He didn't know what to think. He had no idea what was going on. So he hired a third-party service to find her and see where she was living and, you know, that kind of stuff. And they did. And last week, they turned in all of their evidence to his lawyer. And he discovered that she had left him for one of his staff members, a young man that he had trained to learn how to preach, that he had shared his pulpit with him, a young man who the pastor had paid to go to Bible college, gave him a job. He worked hand in hand with the pastor. And in one fleeting moment, the pastor lost his wife and his good friend all at the same time. When he saw the information over at the lawyers, he started to throw up, just throw up one trash can, second trash can, a third trash can, and then he just started to dry heave. He couldn't believe what he saw was the most horrible image and worst thing you could ever imagine.
So this is just so absolutely crazy. And it was this bit about JP talking about him vomiting. We kept saying throwing up, throwing up. It was a lot of throw up. Such weird language. He's so childlike. And then going to describe it even when Rich McHugh would ask him another question, it just seemed so fake to me, like he was trying to put on this show. But then the story that he told on the pulpit, you know, it combines his own story, you know, hiring a private detective to spy on his wife to see what his wife was doing, and then kind of a reverse story of what happened between Micah's first husband, who JP presided over their wedding, by all accounts was JP's best friend, and then when JP was cheating on his wife with Micah, Micah was cheating on her husband, who is JP's best friend, a man who is much younger than JP, who JP had mentored to be with JP. This is all just so very twisted. And then there's again this insertion of this, you know, this graphic, you know, description of the vomiting that happens when the person is really upset. This, to me, was what really brought it all together in a way where I can say, hey, look, here is an example. Listen carefully and look at this. An example of JP's psychosis. JP is the one who is psychotic. JP is the one who is delusional, in addition to controlling, coercive, and abusive.
And I just remember, screaming really loud and throwing up everywhere. And
what did they tell you?
I remember throwing up. Did I have spaghetti that day? It was a lot of throw up. It was something red. I'm sorry?
What did they tell you?
I don't remember that. Oh, no, I don't remember that. Hold on. I don't remember. He said, my family member called the hospital and spoke to, I think, either the head nurse or medical examiner or somebody. And that lady read me stuff that the Robinson County, I guess, had wrote on a piece of paper. And she was reading me suicide and the weapon and where it was at and all these different facts. And so then because the detective would not tell me it was suicide. And then I called him back and told him what the hospital told me, and he was pissed off and asked me who that lady's name was, and I didn't know her name. And if I did know, I wasn't going to tell him anyway, because I'm glad she told me anyway. And so, and I said, is this stuff true? And I can't remember if he said yes or just hung up. I don't remember.
And this really makes you wonder how much of JP's story is actually real, and also How stupid does he think that everybody is? There is no way that he's going to be calling the hospital to see what happened to Micah, and a nurse or the medical examiner, whoever it was, wasn't sure, was going to pick up a piece of paper that had the law enforcement's handwriting on it and start reading it off to him. You know, like literature in English class. That just absolutely isn't going to happen. These are trained medical professionals, and there are things called HIPAA, and also professionals just know how to stay in their lane and fulfill their roles and leave the rest up to the professionals in that area, especially when we're talking about something so sensitive as the death of a 30-year-old person or the death of somebody due to self-harm. This is absolute bullshit. Now here is what Mica Miller's family attorney has to say when asked whether what was said in this interview will be used in court against JP Miller.
Well, as far as putting someone behind bars, that takes a prosecutor that has to meet those burdens of proof. I think that I have lots of evidence that would certainly support potentially a charge. In Micah's situation, it's not one single event. It's not the one single photo. It's not the one single take in her car. It's not the one single, different things that he did to her. It is all of that put together, and in the totality of the circumstances, that becomes a crime. We can't let this fish go. Or should I say Spider-Man? And I would like to talk about that for a minute. Isn't that appropriate for him? Spider-Man spins webs to navigate through a city or through a town, wherever he's going. That's how he gets through. John Paul Miller is Spider-Man because he's always spinning a web to navigate through life. That's what he does.
When JP Miller is asked to describe his relationship with Micah, he gives a much different description than we've heard from anyone else. Listen to this, and then listen to what Micah's sister Anna has to say about what he said here.
Would you characterize your relationship with Micah as healthy?
Oh man, when she was on her medicine, we had the greatest marriage you could ever imagine. We spent every day together. I don't know any other couple that spends every day. So we wake up, well, she'd kind of wake up before me, but we'd go work out together every day, 5 days a week. We'd eat lunch together every day. We would work together every day. We'd pick up the kids, do stuff with the kids every day. We'd go to dinner every night together. Then every night we would have our routine. So there's 3 things we would do. We would either sit in the bathtub together for 2 hours until the water went from steaming hot to ice cold. She bought this big air mattress we'd put in the back of the truck, and we'd go park somewhere here in Myrtle Beach where there's no lights, and she'd bring us some hot chocolate, and we'd lay on the air mattress for 2 hours. Or we would go out on the beach with our beach blanket and lay there for 2 hours. But the point was, no cell phones, just her and I. She would talk 90% of the time. I would talk 10% of the time, and I would just listen. And so every night, 2 hours, we'd hang out together. And so was our marriage healthy? It's probably as healthy as any other American marriage.
Have you ever abused your wife?
Never, not once in any way, shape, or form. I took better care of her than anybody could ever take care of her. I never asked her to clean the house, not once in 7 years of marriage. She never had to cook a single meal. She never had to work. She was never harmed physically in any way.
Well, him just using a simple, he almost wanted to be thanked that she was never forced to clean her house. And he uses those small little things that he might have done that most people would say, oh, I wish I could have a house cleaner or something like that. He uses that as almost like a token. I get to do what I want now today because I didn't make you clean the house today.
Regina, you were working with Micah before she died.
Yes.
What was she telling you? I mean, she called the police about abuse, but tell us what she, if you can, what she was telling you she was going through.
Yeah, I absolutely can. Lawyers usually have a duty of confidentiality even to the grave. But I have the permission to speak about those things through Sierra, who's the special administrator over the estate. So she has assumed the shoes of Micah and speaks for her. So she's given me permission to talk about most of those things. Some no. But basically, Micah was telling me a lot of horrendous things. things that shocked my conscience, and I've been doing this for almost 20 years.
Abuse?
Yes.
What types of abuse?
Every kind that you can imagine, and even kinds that you can't imagine as a normal, rational human being. And to see this absolutely beautiful 20, in her 20, well, she just turned 30, but she lived all of her 20s with this man. And she had such a beautiful spirit and an aura about her that you immediately knew that she was, you sensed that she had a good heart, was a good woman, and she wanted to just be the best Christian woman there ever was. And she was having such a hard time reconciling between what God's teachings say about forgiveness and to pray for our enemies and so forth, and her duty as a wife. She felt spiritually. She struggled with these things because on one point it's God says that as a wife I need to be supportive of my husband, I need to be obedient, and I'm trying to do that, and at the same time God is telling me that I need to forgive someone who's abusing me. So she had a difficult time reconciling, you know, that where am I supposed to forgive my husband for abusing me, for doing these terrible things to me? And like in her video, these terrible, terrible, terrible things.
In a letter or in an email you wrote to Micah, you apologized,
Yes.
right? You apologized for for tracking her, for messing with her tires, for posting the picture. So that's all true, right?
So if I wanted, great question. I'm so glad you asked that, actually. If I wanted to lie about that, I would just say I never wrote the letter, right? Because how can you prove that I wrote somebody a letter? There's no signature, there's no name, it's not in my handwriting. But I 100% wrote the letter. And I did it because the night that she was with me, the last night we were together for 4 hours, at one point, because the whole 4 hours I'm trying to get her to take her medicine. And then she said, my family doesn't want me to, they don't want me to come inside the house. Maybe it's your house, come inside. So finally get to the point, she says, you know what, I'll take my medicine and I'll come home if you'll give me $10,000 and if you'll write me an apology letter.
So let me understand this correctly. The letter, the email that you wrote to Micah, apologizing for hiring a PI, tracking her, messing with her tires, and posting a topless photo of her. You wrote that, you say,
yes,
but
sir.
Now you're saying that you didn't actually do these things.
I did the PI thing, but so over the years what I've learned with her is when she's in a delusional state of mind, I have to play into it in order to get her back on medicine. So the first year or two when she'd say something, I'd say, that's not true, that's not real. She'd get mad and blow up and, you know, knock a hole in the wall or something like that. So then by December 2019, I think it was, we were watching TV and she just stopped and said, you're a double agent. And I said, no, I'm not. She says, yes, you are. She said, and I'm going to call the police. She said, you're a double agent, you've stolen my things, and I'm going to put you in jail. And I was like, oh my goodness, what I'll do. She hadn't been taking her medicine.
So just to be clear, you wrote this to Micah, but now you're saying you didn't do those things.
No, I did not slash the tire. I did not. I don't think there's a naked picture of her anywhere, ever. Anyway, I think that was just a made-up thing. And I think that her tire just got something ran over, from what I understand. I don't know. I didn't see anything. But I did hire the PI before. I did everything I could to stop her from getting a weapon. Everything you could imagine. I hired a private eye, and I said, put a tracker on her car, and if she gets anywhere near a gun store, please let me know. I did everything I could think of, and.
Did that private eye alert you that day?
No, I had stopped paying for it about 4 weeks beforehand. Yeah.
Why?
Running out of money and people telling me that she was totally fine and I'm wasting my time.
So we already did talk about how Rich McHugh says that after the interview, JP Miller sent him a text saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I lied about why I stopped hiring the PI, and we still don't know what the real reason is or if he gave Rich McHugh a reason. But as far as this whole bit about she was making him write her a letter stating all of these things, well, according to what Anna says, it seems that JP Miller was the one who had a thing for forcing other people to write letters to someone that they may or may not mean. This is so crazy. Listen to this.
And if she said, I want to divorce John Paul or I want to get back together, we would just support her, anything she said. So And again, on like the medicine, I think that's just his only way to kind of control the narrative, is to talk about how mentally ill she was whenever she wasn't mentally ill her whole life. She only had any kind of signs, in his opinion, of being mentally ill since the day they got married. And 3 to 4 months after they got married is when she was first hospitalized. And then it just kept happening, and we were starting to see a pattern. And even through that pattern, I sometimes would speak up, and to the point where John Paul actually served me with a cease and desist letter a few years ago, and also he put a stipulation on me and Micah's relationship and said, you have to write an apology letter to me to be able to talk to your sister. So if anyone was controlling whether Micah was speaking to her family, it was John Paul. Yeah, and I did not do what he said. I did not write an apology letter, because I was putting my beliefs out there. I was stating the truth. And what John Paul can't handle is the truth and what was happening in that situation. So I wasn't allowed to speak to my sister per John Paul for over a year. And then when she went to go leave him, I was able to have a relationship with my sister again.
This question that Rich McHugh asks here is the reason that J.P. Miller has created this whole ridiculous narrative in the first place. And when he asks this question, it provides J.P. Miller the perfect opportunity to sum the entire narrative up.
What do you say to the doubters and critics who say you drove her to suicide?
That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. So wait, she wasn't with me. Because listen, with me, she didn't commit suicide. Apart from me for 3 months and with her family, she did commit suicide. One of the last things she showed me a book she's reading called I Love Jesus, But I Want to Die. And I said, why do you want to die? She said, because I can't come home because my family won't let me. That's what I say to them.
Do you feel that you did anything that you would change? Do you feel any part responsible?
God, that's a great question. Man, that's such a good question. Wow, what a good question. Can I have a second to think about it?
Sure.
Okay. Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. What would I do differently? Oh man. I know what I do. I would not involve her family when she's having mental episodes and is schizophrenic and is off her meds. I would never have texted them.
We've seen you dressed as Spider-Man in videos.
Okay, let me just wait, hold on. I'm not Spider-Man. I can neither confirm nor deny.
To me, it says Spider-Man as the person who's texting me. So we've seen you in videos dressed as Spider-Man. We know there's a Spider-Man character in the back of your house somewhere. Her family wonders if you have identity issues and this need to align with superheroes. What's your reaction? And what's the reason for the Spider-Man?
Well, first of all, I can neither confirm nor deny that I've ever put on a Spider-Man costume. But you'll never see me in the same room with Spider-Man, I will say that. And I don't know, people say stuff. Me and Micah would go to...
So you don't get in the Spider-Man costume? Yeah. I mean, you just sent me a picture with you and Spider-Man.
Me and Micah, we'd go to Comic-Cons every year. We both dress up. Micah dressed up more than I did, actually. There are times I didn't dress up and she did. We love that kind of stuff. She was Wonder Woman, she was Spider-Woman, she was Mystique, she was a lot of different characters.
So you're not even going to grant that there's something odd here?
No, I'm not. No. I put on the Spider-Man costume. I go see handicapped children. I'll go visit kids that love comic books and that are handicapped, and I'll pretend like I'm Spider-Man, and I'll take them a comic book and do videos with them and stuff like that.
One of the videos that has surfaced recently is from years ago, and I'm sure you know what it is. You're sitting face down on the ground and you're freaking out, and you're talking about, you're literally squealing about being eaten by ants, taking the wrong meds, that you missed your family.
Ants biting me everywhere. Is your medication something they gave you?
Yeah, they were drunk. I mean, for viewers, for people watching it, the common thought is, what is going on here, and do you have a drug problem?
So, I fell out of a tree, a giant magnolia tree. It was like 300 years old. I broke 12 bones. It was 10 to 12 bones. I don't know if you count fingers. Yeah, it is count fingers. Anyway, I have all this metal in my body, and I'd never taken pain meds in my life, and I just had my body cast taken off, and so I took a little bit too much pain meds that day.
That's it.
That's
just
it.
What? Percocet?
I don't remember any of them. It was 2017, 2016, and it was like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever. And I was missing my family. My wife, Micah, and I, we started through an affair, and so we were both married to people, and then we got divorced, and I was missing my family because I'd lost my family at the time, and I was on pain meds, and it just all went together. I fell out of a tree, broke a bunch of bones, took too many pain meds. That was that story.
Not hallucinogenics.
Not what is it? What would hallucinogenic be?
Make you hallucinate.
Well, what makes you hallucinate?
Drugs.
Like illegal drugs?
Hallucinogenic drugs, yeah.
Oh, I've never done a legal drug my whole life.
Okay.
Well, oh crap, that was a lie. I'm sorry, that was a lie. When I was 16 years old, one time I was in a truck with two of my friends, and they were both smoking pot. I didn't smoke any, but they do a thing called hot box, and so I got some of that. And I tried steroids one time.
What was it like watching this interview? How did it make you feel?
At one point, I burst out and started laughing. Like, just straight up started laughing. Because of just how ridiculous half of everything was. And we can prove basically everything he said wasn't true.
What part made you laugh?
Whenever you asked him if he had never, well, the first part that made me laugh was whenever you asked him, has he ever done any drugs? And he said, absolutely not. I would never. And then he goes, I just lied. And then said that he smoked or something, didn't. Sat in a car when he was 16, whatever. And we know that he had done recreation things as a 40-year-old man in his 40s, late 30s. We know that for a fact. So we can prove that he's done it more than once. And then saying he's done steroids just once, tried it once, that's also, we can prove that he's done that more than once as well.
One of the videos that has surfaced recently is from years ago, and I'm sure you know what it is. You're sitting face down on the ground and you're freaking out, and you're talking about, you're literally squealing about being eaten by ants, taking the wrong meds, that you missed your family.
Ants biting me everywhere.
Is your medication something they gave you?
I mean, for viewers, for people watching it, the common thought is, what is going on here, and do you have a drug problem?
So, I fell out of a tree, a giant magnolia tree. It was like 300 years old. I broke 12 bones. It was 10 to 12 bones. I don't know if you count fingers. Yeah, it is count fingers. Anyway, I have all this metal in my body, and I'd never taken pain meds in my life, and I just had my body cast taken off, and so I took a little bit too much pain meds that day.
So regarding that video of JP rolling around in the grass and squealing and kind of freaking out like a baby, saying he's going to see Jesus and thinking that he's eaten by ants, I want to know, what do y'all think about that scene right there? So he says here that it's a matter of him taking pain medication, and he had a reaction to the pain medication, and other times it said that he was off of his lithium or something like that. But from my perspective, he is just going to do anything that he needs to do to get attention and to get his way. He really is just a big baby. Now, I showed this, first of all, to my 16-year-old son and asked him, what do you think is going on here? And he's like, Mom, obviously he's taking a nervous breakdown. What are you talking about? And then I also showed it to, I had a couple people that I work with that watch the channel. Hi, guys. And they are gracious enough during lunch. Sometimes they let me bother them and show them clips of whatever to see what they think. And all of us professionals in the field of behavioral psychology saw the same thing. that JP Miller was just willing to do anything to get attention, even faking that big humiliating scene where he's rolling around in the grass, calling attention from all of his neighbors, and just not caring in that moment because he is so laser focused on whatever it is JP wants, JP is going to get it. So what does that mean for Mica Miller? How far did JP Miller go when he knew that Micah finally was behaving differently, and all the ways that she was behaving differently, talking differently, looking differently, indicated to him that she was going to finally leave him? That question is yet to be determined, and I certainly hope that the answer is revealed through the FBI investigation or through forthcoming trials that I pray are coming up. Justice for Micah. We pray for her family. They're beautiful people, and I hope we find answers for them and for Micah because she deserves it. Thank you so much for watching. We hope to see you again.